Hey everybody, welcome to Comics and Chronic. My name is Anthony Iannaccio. Jake and Cody aren't here today. I think they got stuck in the Phantom Zone, so I gotta go save them later. But today I'm joined by a special guest, writer Kyle Higgins. I'm a big fan of his work. You might have read Radiant Black from Image. He recently came out with Moon Man, co-written by Kid Cudi. He's done work for the big two in the Batman universe with books like Nightwing and Gates of Gotham. And I'm just a huge fan. So Kyle, welcome to Comics and Chronic.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
So right away, so the first comic I've read of yours was The Dead Hand back in 2018, which is, I just love the concept of that. And I feel like with AI getting as crazy as it is, like I was rereading it today actually, and it just felt even scarier reading it this time around.
Yeah, it's it's something I haven't revisited it in a little bit. I was talking about it recently because I don't know, have some ideas for some things kind of that we debuted there. But it was, for anyone who doesn't know, it was a series that Stephen Mooney and I did in Image Comics. I wrote it, Stephen drew it, Jordi Belair colored it, Clayton Cowles lettered it, and it basically looks at, it's like secret cities of the Soviet Union and the autonomous doomsday weapons that still believe the Cold War is going on. And so it's this kind of like spy-fi series that has like a significant grounded world building to it that also has that slight touch of, I don't want to say the fantastic, but it's not of this world. But in the way that, like, for Steven and I, we were both really big Metal Gear Solid fans.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
And so, technology in Metal Gear Solid is slightly more advanced than what was actually possible in the eras that it's, telling stories in. And so we kind of took that approach as well with it. But, I still haven't finished watching The Creator.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
From the trailers, I mean, I've seen the first half of it, and I actually quite like it. Nice. Everyone, all my friends, I feel like, tell me like it falls off the rails, but so far I dig it. But like watching the trailers for it ahead of time, or when it first came out, I remember like all the stuff with the little boy, the AI little boy, and I was like, oh, yeah. But that's all right.
Well, I was gonna ask if like it was ever like planned for something like live action.
There was, yeah. I mean, The Dead Hand is one of the rare books of mine that I've optioned, because in past experiences, when situations or offers have been on the table, ultimately, like my first love is writing and is really directing, and that's what I've been doing my whole life. I enjoyed reading comics as both a kid, but throughout my life. But it was movies that I was always making and wanting to make. So it's funny that I ended up making comics for a living, but in some ways the comics for me as a filmmaker have also been something from early on that I've recognized that like there's a lot of value in the creators owning their work.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's rare that I option something without being involved. And so on The Dead Hand, that was one of the rare ones where it was a pretty cool company, Annapurna, that we optioned it to. And so it was with them for, they re-upped it a few times, probably almost 4 years, as, we were looking at how to build it out as a show. But ultimately, it didn't end up happening. So we have it back now, but we've actually got some pretty fun plans for it in the future that, you might start to hear about in maybe 2025, I would say.
Nice. I'll definitely be on the lookout for that. Seriously, like once I read that, I started looking for your work anywhere I could find it. And I think the next thing was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which was so kick-ass. Obviously a show I grew up with. I know a lot of our listeners grew up with. Mm-hmm. I loved your adaptation of it. I mean, I loved how you expanded upon the mythology. You really made, I watched it as a kid. Like I have no shame in liking superheroes and stuff like that, but you made it feel cool again, at least for me.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was always kind of the approach. I used to say when I was on the book that I tried to approach it and write the book not as I remember the show, or sorry, what it was. I approached writing the book not as the show existed and not even as I remember it existing, but more so how I wrote it, like how I remembered it making me feel.
Mm.
So just those like big, huge arcs and those moves with the Green Ranger that give more like the illusion of more of an arc than is actually there.
Hmm.
But just those big moves of like, oh my God, we're how many episodes in? And now there's an evil dark want version of them, and it's this kid from school, and then he's like now an ally, but then he's losing the powers, loses them, they bring him back. Like those are like really bold kind of narrative moves within the context of what that concept is, and that coupled with the fact that something that was really impressed to me early on when I was at DC was just to always remember and be mindful of the fact that you have an unlimited budget in comics. So you don't have the type of limitations that you have in other mediums where you're worrying about budget to do, a 20-minute giant robot fight. And are you doing that practical? Are you doing it in CG? Is it like, what is it? So coming at Power Rangers, and I really kind of pride myself as a writer and a storyteller, just a world builder in general, on taking full advantage of a concept that I'm working with. And so with Rangers, it became like, okay, like let's tell this grounded interpersonal high school drama in settings that you can use because we're in the world, we're drawing it, we're not having to film it, and let's just try to take full advantage of what the Power Rangers could be as essentially a high school superhero property.
Yeah, like and your take on it felt way more real because like I laugh at it looking back on the show because it's like giant monsters destroy the city every single day and everyone's just like, yeah, it's cool, we'll just go to the juice bar.
Yeah, I remember there were two funny moments to me with this. I remember writing the dialogue for issue 0 when I was like on a trip with people, and it was something I had to get done before we went to a dinner. And I remember writing, like, as I was writing the Bulk and Skull dialogue for their YouTube channel, the idea of some of the narration or some of the person on the street segments that they're doing, kind of introducing almost like a conspiracy theory that like the monster actually attacked the bridge. Maybe this was in issue 1. I think this was in issue 1 actually, on the events from issue 0, or that the Dragon Zord swung first, or something
right,
like that.
It destroys the bridge. Yeah.
And I remember it ended up showing up. I think like Bleeding Cool ran an article about like me doing 9/11 conspiracy theories in a Power Ranger account. It was like, that was not the intended. I mean, sure, that's what you want to comp it to. It's crazy how weirdly prescient it turned out to be. The other bit that it reminds me of is when the first time I met Brian Casantini, who ran the brand during my time with it, initially at Saban and then at Hasbro later. But we did a big launch party at Gallery Nucleus in LA. This gorgeous gallery, like showing of all the covers from issue, I think 0 and issue 1. And they got myself and I'm blanking on who the other writer was. She had written the stories for the Free Comic Book Day or the San Diego Comic-Con like exclusives. Marguerite Savage. No, Marguerite
Bennett?
No. Oh my gosh. I'm so embarrassed. I know her. Anyway, my apologies. But we ended up signing together for like, an hour or two of this like launch party. And Brian came up and he was like, I just read issue 2. And that's where they're like in the Dragon Zord, Billy and Trini, like talking about like, their feelings kind of about Tommy coming back and some of this stuff going on. And he's like, and I told Melissa, I was like, oh my God, they're just people. Like they're just talking. They just talk like people. I was like, yeah, that's kind of what we're going for, So, I'm glad that it's, I don't know. It's just, that's the way I saw it and thought it could work, and it's cool that it did, I guess, is how I would sum it up.
Nice. I mean, I could see that in all of your work. I mean, especially Radiant Black, where the characters feel real and they're talking like real people, despite them being in like these fantastic situations. So Nathan and Marshall, completely relatable characters. Is there one of them that like you feel like you connect more with, or are they both sides of your personality in a way?
Yeah, there's definitely different aspects of my personality that are components of each of theirs. Yeah, so it's a little. I like to say like the book's not about me, but there's a lot of me in it. And it is funny when we did the vote for who should be Radiant Black, Nathan or Marshall. It was funny to watch the results and the people writing dissertations about who it should be and their and why the other one was wrong, and just these are very personal characters to me, so
Yeah.
it was a weird dynamic to see, but it's good. I mean, that was my goal from honestly the get-go. Like, I kind of knew I knew the moves, like the big beats of the 3-year arc before I finished issue 1.
Oh wow.
And so I knew that to do this right, it really had to, Nathan and Marshall both had to feel lived in and built out. And it was their relationship, that dynamic, that was really going to be at the heart of this series, that ended up, we pitched it as Power Rangers meets Invincible. I like to describe it as Power Rangers with adult problems. Then now it's definitely turned out to be much more about these two disillusioned millennials and them coming to terms with, living in the ashes of the American dream. I don't know what, just like unfulfilled potential and dreams and their relationship with that. And yeah, I think that plus the cosmic representing both a chance to do something significant and meaningful, but also potentially the end of everything if you don't rise to the challenge. Like, I think that push and pull is something that is a lot of fun. And that was always kind of at the heart of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of late to the game in Radiant for the massive verse in general. Like, so I think maybe a month ago there was this big sale where they were like all the digitally available. So I kind of was able to catch up that way. But man, I'm sad that I like didn't get into this series earlier, because I want to like, I'm just like one volume away and then I'm caught up. So like, I feel like I'm part of the crew now.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. We're glad to have you. So wait, so do you know how much stuff do you know or not know? Like, do you know about the secret? Do you know about the QR code and the merchandise box that we did with issue 9?
Okay, so while I was reading, I did actually snap a pic of the QR code and it took me to the site. Yeah, so I found that out pretty quick.
But we did a puzzle box with issue 9 that we only made 160 of. And the box was a Radiant Black welcome box, helping you to welcome Radiant Black to the neighborhood.
Oh, that's awesome.
Marshall pitched with the Circle Guy News. And so the real Circle Guy News crew is Ryan, Bill, and TJ of the Invincible podcast in real life. And they're
shit.
So I flew out to Buffalo and we made all of these boxes ourselves. They included a Radiant Black bath bomb, a bag, branded bag, a black light, and a few other things, including a thumb drive. And when you plug it into your computer, it was locked. And but the volume label is access, because in issue 9, Marshall tells the guys he'll give them access. And so you have to find the password, which is hidden in the box, which is revealed by the black light, and you have to translate it using the Radiant alphabet to unlock the thumb drive. And we did all this exclusive, like, early look material. So we did that. Wow. We did stuff like that. Do you know about the QR code in issue 15 with the anime?
No, I guess not.
Did you read issue 15 yet?
Yeah. I'm up to like issue 20. I just read issue 24.
So the Radiant Black short film with Blaze, the YouTube film that they're making, when you go to the page that's a double page spread and it's now playing Blaze versus Radiant Black.
Yeah.
QR code. You should scan that QR code. We made a 5.5 minute fully animated film with Will Friedle from Batman Beyond voicing Radiant Black.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
That's all in universe with the comic. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wait, okay. I think you actually posted this recently. I did watch that. Is that the same animation team as Invincible? Is that?
No, I mean, but the thing is, all of the studios work on everything. So okay. I think they did. I do think it's Tiger Animation in South Korea. I think they worked on Invincible. We actually boarded it and did the style guides and the turnarounds, all the character models ourselves. Eduardo Ferragato and Marcelo Costa. Eduardo also drew the book. And then we brought in a storyboard artist who had worked on Batman Beyond, coincidentally, Brandon McKinney. We did all the backgrounds ourselves. Ramon Palermo on my side did all the cel-shaded CG backgrounds. So it was, and then Christopher Carter from Batman Beyond scored the whole short film. I directed it, co-wrote it with Alec, who co-created Kyle with me, and then Alec edited the film. So yeah, it was a very, very, very fun project. And you know about the vote, right?
No. So when was that what you were talking about earlier? Like who should get to be Radiant Black?
So at the end of issue 24, when the robot says you must decide, there was a QR code in the monthly book. And when you scan that QR code, it goes to a vote. And you're going to find out who won the vote and is the final Radiant Black at the end of the Catalyst War.
Oh, so that hasn't even happened yet.
No, it's already coming out.
Oh, it's coming out. Okay.
Yeah, we're almost done with the Catalyst War. But there's a secret that I'm going to spoil for you because we published both endings, one where the characters choose Nathan and one where the characters choose Marshall.
Ooh.
Under the A cover and the B cover of issue 25. And now for the last 5 months, we've been publishing 2 books a month, continuing the alternate timelines.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And they both matter for the event, and they're 2 completely different stories.
That is so cool. Everything you just described is just so different. I'm not seeing any other, comics doing this. That's really cool.
Oh,
I need to get this monthly. I need to, like I said, I don't know how I missed out on this for so long. Seriously, anybody listening, go check out Radiant Black. It's a great series. The Massiveverse has more than just Radiant Black. There's a lot of, I guess some of them are spin-offs, but I guess some of them are just kind of like on this, like parallel to what's happening.
Yeah. Parallel is the best way to describe it. The thing is that like we wanted this universe to be really accessible. So you only need to read what you like. And I guess for anyone who doesn't know, what Radiant Black is this book that is a part of an interconnected, shared superhero universe, creator-owned at Image Comics. And it's primarily made up of, on the writing side, we're all former Power Ranger writers. So myself, Ryan Parrott, who does Rogue Sun with the artist Abel, Melissa Flores, who does The Dead Lucky with French Carlomagno and Matea Inocho. And then Matt Groom, who does Inferno Girl Red with Erica D'Urso and Igor Monti. So once a year, we do a 48-page one-shot where the characters all meet and it's done in one. It's not necessary to read for any of their arcs, but their current status quos are reflected in each of these done-in-one stories. So it is at what we end up doing in there is additive. So like, for example, in the one this past year, it took place in between issue 24 of Radiant Black when the robot tells them they have to make a choice in issue 25. And in issue 25, the characters, when we are struggling to make that choice still, the supermassive that came in between, for them, the arc is about them thinking they're going to be able to find a magic solution and realizing that there is none and they're going to have to make this decision. So it ends up being additive to the arc. But again, it is, you don't have to read it if you don't want to. So everything's standalone in that way. Radiant Black, Inferno Girl Red, Rogue Sun, The Dead Lucky, Cowl. But then we've done a Radiant Red miniseries and a Radiant Pink miniseries, and those are spinoffs from Radiant Black. Those are other characters in Radiant Black.
So I feel like before I read it, I would immediately like see all that and be like, oh, this reminds me of Power Rangers. But reading it, it's not that. I feel like it's way more than that. Like I feel like it's almost inaccurate to like compare it to that. Not in a bad way, but like I just feel like Radiant Black is so much more. I just love it so much. So just props to you for just like making such a great comic book.
Thank you so much. The other one that you might not know about then, because it wasn't in the Humble Bundle, because it's not in a trade paperback yet, is our true crime superhero series, No One, that we do monthly. It's a 10-issue maxi series, I guess we would describe it as. But the really cool thing about it is that it's very immersive. And what I mean by that is the book is set against the backdrop of these accountability killings that have started in Pittsburgh. And this digital hacktivist, No One, who kind of kicked this whole situation off by doxing these 4 very corrupt people, And then when nothing happened to them, someone started killing them. No one is also a physical presence in the book. It's kind of our helmeted, very, kind of Batman-esque, kind of contemporary vigilante character. But two of the reporters in the book who are chronicling all of this are talked into starting a podcast by the new media division of their newspaper. And so we make that podcast every month with Rachel Lee Cook and Patton Oswalt voicing the two reporters.
Whoa.
Todd Stashwick from Star Trek Picard, Yuri Lowenthal from the Spider-Man Insomniac games, Lauren Lester is the voice of No One from Batman the Animated Series. He's
so cool. Oh, man.
And then on top of that, we also make all of the websites that are in universe and all of the newspaper articles that have been published about this. We've made those as well. Thanks to Peter Nikias, who is our consultant. He's a former crime reporter for the Chicago Tribune and CNN. So this is a very kind of immersive multimedia story. Again, you could just read the book, but actually at a certain point, the story in the book and the podcast very, very much become intertwined. And that was, again, the goal. So yeah, we're doing stuff like that as well. And we are trying to do things different, as you commented on before. Like that's kind of the goal of it. Like to me, the whole point of the Massiverse is to both celebrate the different aspects of superheroes that we all love and kind of grew up loving, but to try to push those aspects forward and to do them for right now. And sometimes that means, utilizing different techniques and different mediums and different tools, because that's honestly the kind of, content culture that we live in this day and age. So it's something we kind of embrace. And as, again, my first love being directing and filmmaking, like it's also like a really fun opportunity to bring in some of these other, storytelling avenues that, I'm pretty passionate about.
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, it's almost like you're so much more than a writer when you're doing that. Like, it seems like, so is this all part of Black Market Narrative? Is that what it like falls under?
It is, yeah. So Black Market Narrative is, it's my company. It's our creative collective studio. So all the Massiverse books are done, by way of Black Market Narrative. And then we do other projects as well, like, Moon Man with Kid Cudi. That's not part of the Massiverse, but that's a Black Market Narrative co-production with Mad Solar. And then it's published at Image. And there's a multimedia component to that one as well, with some really cool music that Scott's been putting together for the book. And then we just announced last week or the week before, the Singularity, which is a massive original graphic novel that is also connected to a companion piece to a double disc heavy metal rock concept album from Bear McCreary.
Whoa.
That features like everyone playing on this thing, Slash and Serge Tankian from System of a Down and Corey Taylor, Slipknot, and Rufus Wainwright. They just dropped the first single with Rufus Wainwright, Joe Satriani. So Matt Groom,
that's so badass.
Matt Groom, who does Inferno Girl Red, amongst a host of other things. Matt came in when Bear approached me about putting together a comic for him or with him. And Matt found a way to build a narrative that gave a story to the track order and the tracks themselves about the death of a multiverse. And so it's 15 different artists drawing these different lives that the characters reincarnate through as this story kind of, goes through these wild realms and gets into like this very kind of humanist place, looking at, well, I don't want to spoil it too much. It's concept album.
but that sounds so cool.
So we do stuff like that as well. And then like we produce the No One podcast and some other projects that haven't been announced yet.
I feel like you have to be the only ones doing this. I mean, I know there are like Marvel podcasts, but like nothing in the scope of what you've been talking about.
Yeah, I don't think no one else has tried something like this. So it's interesting. I think part of why I talk about it as often as I can is because it's not something that a lot of people know about. You had no idea about it. And that unfortunately is the state of our market right now. There's so many books, so many books, way too many books.
Yeah.
It's impossible for retailers and readers to keep track of everything that they should be paying attention to or might be interested in. And, I'm excited for when we put out the trade paperback of No One. And I feel the exact same way about our big our big jazz fiction series, Deep Cuts. We think that in collected edition, like it's definitely going to find another audience, especially with some of the stuff that I'm planning for it once it's all out in trade paperback.
Nice. Yeah. Like I have to admit, like I do like wait for a lot of trades. Even like Radiant Black, I was kind of honestly holding out a little bit just because I'm like, I know one day we'll get like a nice hardcover like down the line, but like I that's just the kind of collector I am.
Sure.
But I mean, like I had to just pick them up. Like as soon as I finished volume 1, I just ordered the rest of them, like the rest of the massive verse. Like one thing I really like about it too is like I was saying before, like a lot of the characters are relatable. Like your dialogue's relatable. It just feels real. And then it's such a small detail, but there's this Comics and Chronic, and I have to bring it up. Marshall's like smokes weed in a few issues. And
oh yeah,
it's such like a small thing, but I'm just like, hell yeah! Like you don't really even see that enough in comics, you know?
Yeah. Marshall definitely he smokes weed and gets into arguments with teenagers because the front of the house he rents in Lockport is next to the freshman campus high school that is the high school I went to.
Oh shit.
So I actually didn't live in Lockport. I lived in Homer Glen, but I went to high school in Lockport at both campuses. So like I said, it's not about me, but there's a lot of me in it. And he definitely smokes. There was a scene in Moon Man we had too in issue 1 that didn't end up. I don't remember what happened. Nothing happened. It just didn't end up making it into the art, where I had a big, like a lit joint next to a CD Walkman player.
Do you have like a relationship with weed at all?
Yeah, I definitely smoke a decent amount. It's something I'm trying to cut back on. I've had 5 knee surgeries in 5 years, and I don't mess around with painkillers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm getting ready for my 6th knee surgery in like 2 months for another cartilage transplant. So like I'm in a lot of pain all the time. And between that and the amount of stress that all of the work is on a day-to-day basis, like, yeah, I mean, it's something that just something I started probably around COVID, like a number of people.
Yeah.
But yep.
No, that's cool to hear. I mean, I respect when people could be stoners and still like, you're a successful guy. So I feel like the stereotype doesn't need to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think like regardless, there's a certain kind of level of of drive that you just have to be able to make any of this kind of stuff work for a living. And, that's either there or it's not,
right.
Whether there's weed or not.
And I kind of was thinking that like, okay, so like hooking up with Kid Cudi for a comic, obviously he's like a prolific stoner. So like, I mean, I used to listen to him in college all the time while I was smoking, he's that kind of dude. How was working with him and how is like that creative relationship?
It's great. Yeah. Scott's awesome. I have been working with him for over 2 years now, but yeah, it's been a good collaboration building this thing out. And, I just got some fun notes from him on the issue 2 script as we're kind of racing to put the finishing touches on this issue. But it's a very cool, like the things that we're going to hopefully try are pretty exciting. And the kind of the plans that Scott has for what he wants his character to be and potentially become are also pretty exciting. So it's the type of project that you're looking for, honestly, as a creator, like something that feels like, oh, this could have a high ceiling to it, but also, and because of that, it ends up like, I only know how to make books one way, which is kind of going all out, like no matter what. It's nice to do that on something where you feel like there's the potential for it to have some really good reach. Especially at this stage in my career. So it's all in all, I mean, and for Scott, like coming and doing, this is really like his first big comics project. So
right.
Coming in and working with us and Michael Basutil, who edits and designs everything, and Marco Licati, our amazing artist.
Oh, they are so beautiful.
Igor Monti, our amazing colorist, and even Chase Conley, who designed the suit. It's been really cool to be able to show Scott how this all comes together and what the process is. And, to his credit, like from the jump, he wanted to do this, the right way and make sure that this was something that was that we were building it in a way that was proper and the way that you should build a series, like an ongoing comic series. What I mean by that is like, a lot of times you see celebrity projects that feel like cash grabs or feel like, they come in or put their name on something. And that was like definitely not what Scott wanted at all. Like he's loved comics his whole life. So that's also the type of collaborator that is exciting for me to work with.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't feel that way at all. And I read the first issue. You actually sent it to us, which awesome. Thank you for that again. Like before it came out, a little preview. But it's definitely the kind of comic where I need to read the next issue because like it sets up so much. And like, especially that last panel, like it even gave me Radiant Black vibes. Like for a second, like you said it already, it's not connected, but I was like, is this in the Massiverse? Like it kind of has that feel, but in the best way possible. So I'm excited to see where the rest of that series is going for sure. So on this month on the podcast, we're talking about Batman. Like every week, we're tackling a what we call a classic Batman comic. And one of them we just did was Court of Owls.
Yeah.
So Night of the Owls, you were writing Nightwing at the time. Was that is Nightwing like a character that like you feel like you have you did his entire New 52 run? Is that right? Like you were on him for a while.
I did. I wrote the entire New 52 run. There's also a poster of him over my shoulder here from the Chuck Dixon, Scott McDaniel run. This was an announcement poster. It's actually signed by Chuck and Scott from back when I got the book. I found this poster on eBay and reached out to them both. And I'd actually met them both as like a teenager. So it was kind of cool, but also probably weird. I don't know that like I'm writing a book now, but yeah, the Court of Owls stuff. It's funny because I love that book. I think it's one of Scott's best. I think it's one of the best things Scott's ever written in comics.
Absolutely.
And it was so formative for me to be around for it all. Scott and I were working on Gates of Gotham together before the Court of Owls, but he had already been planning what the Court of Owls story was going to become. But at that time, it was a Dick Grayson as Batman story because all of the components of Dick Grayson's origin tying to the Owls by way of, his great grandfather being the main Talon assassin in those first couple issues. That makes a ton of sense when you consider that Bruce Wayne was Batman at the time. But then with the New 52 and the elevation of Scott to the main Batman title and also bringing Bruce back, it became, Scott very wisely was able to work it into a Bruce story in a beautiful way and still had these beats of Dick Grayson's origin. And because I had done Gates of Gotham, it became a really cool opportunity to like continue some of that stuff from the late 1800s and the families of power in Gotham and everything in the Nightwing issues of the Court of Owls event, as you're getting into the backstory of the Grayson name and where that stuff, where his lineage kind of comes from and how it intersects with the Owls. So it was like 3 years of my life. I feel like Scott and I would talk about Court of Owls stuff, but it was so formative to be there to watch how Scott built it and then how he handled conceptualizing the tie-in issues in a way where, honestly, to this day, the way we do Supermassive is kind of a similar approach, which is like they should be additive but not necessary. I always took the event issues as an opportunity because there were so many of them. That was the other thing of the run. It was like a little tricky is like every time we kind of got going, there was another bad event that suddenly we had to pause and like go enter that. So what I started doing was when I knew far enough in advance, I would design my arc for Dick Grayson for those 6 issues or whatever. I would design it so that by the time the Bat event happened, like Death of the Family, the tie-in to the event ended up also being the culmination of the arc that I was putting Dick Grayson on for the issues before it. So it all felt narratively more cohesive for me, and it gave me something to arc towards. But anyway, yes, the Court of Owls. We were part of the Night of the Owl stuff for sure.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting to hear. Like the creative process, especially coming from you. Like I said, I really like your work. So getting like this kind of like behind the scenes of how that came together is really cool. Was Gates of Gotham your first Batman book or Bat Universe book?
It was. I did 2 short stories, 2 10-page stories before that for the Detective Comics and Batman annuals that year. David Hine was writing the main stories, and it was a 2-part story across both annuals where Dick and Bruce head to France, to Paris, to set up the French chapter of Batman Incorporated, essentially. And so the starts as a foe. Foe's not. I guess antagonist becomes an ally. Bilal Asala, who becomes ultimately the Night Runner. And so I wrote the origin stories for Bilal, and Trevor McCarthy, who had done Nightwing many years earlier, was starting to come back into DC. And so Trevor and I were paired up by Mike Martz. And those short stories are what, got me more work at DC, and the editor, Mike Martz, was definitely a big advocate of mine at that time. And he connected me and Scott after they came out and everything. And so Scott and I started talking, starting to get to know each other, and he was doing Detective Comics. And so I read a couple, he sent me some scripts to take a look at and to talk over. And then when the opportunity for Gates came up, they basically had like a concept, which is a murder mystery that is so big, it brings the Bat family together and spans generations, getting to like the heart of like Gotham history. And I was like, what's the mystery? And they're like, well, that's why we're calling you. But yeah, so Gates was the first really big swing opportunity after the Night Runner stuff. The Night Runner stories made it on, like, the Daily Show did a segment on it, which was really cool.
Oh shit.
Yeah. But yeah, and then from Gates that teed up the New 52. And so then I wrote Deathstroke and Night for the first 8 issues. And then I also wrote Nightwing I wrote the whole run. I wrote the first like 30 or 29 issues. I think there's one issue. There's 2 issues in the middle that Tom DeSanto wrote because I was behind and they wouldn't let me catch up. And then there's the final issue 30 is like, I think it's Tim Seeley and Tom King, but it's something that came together like very, very, very last second. So I wrapped everything up in my run in 29.
Did you get to basically end it the way you wanted to?
That's a complicated question.
Okay.
Look, it's rare in comics for you to leave a book the way you want. There were politics at the time, and there were some other events that were going on, and I got the heads up. Like with 4 or 5 months to go. So no, less than that. Maybe 3. So I was able to at least build, 2 issues to kind of wrap my time up. But it's really the second issue of those 2, issue 29, that I'm like very, very proud of. Like that's the issue of Nightwing that I'm the most proud of. So I'm really glad I was able to get across the plate. And they were, happy to not pay attention at that point.
So you talked a lot about having like a filmmaking background. Are you just working on comics? Is there something outside of comics that you're working on at all?
There's a number of things. Yes. So nothing I can talk about, unfortunately.
Okay.
Just yet. But yeah, there's stuff that you'll probably never hear about. Like there's a screenplay I'm writing right now for a studio that, I mean, I don't know. Like I don't assume that those things are ever going to go necessarily. Like
that's Nathan talking.
Well, it's sure. I mean, the reality of it's just the reality of how these things work when they're writing jobs.
For sure.
Then I have some stuff of my own and some other kind of big swing film plans that we're trying to put together right now for yeah. So there's that kind of stuff. And And then there's other stuff in other mediums actually that we're also working in. Some of it tied to the Massiverse, some of it not. So, again, you might hear something at C2E2 this year.
Okay. Comic wise, is there anything you could talk about on the horizon? Well, you said the Singularity. I know that.
Singularity is the big announcement right now. The trade paperback for Deep Cuts is coming out on I think the third week of May.
Ooh, okay.
So issue 6 is about to have its final order cut off, and so that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. But then the big almost 300 page collected edition of the whole book will be out in May, and then No One will be coming on the heels of that. Probably this fall would be my guess.
Nice. I'll definitely be on the lookout. I think we had a great talk. I hope everyone listening, if they haven't checked out any of your work, has heard something that you've talked about and immediately goes to buy it, Radiant Black especially. Kyle, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast.
Awesome. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. Take it easy.
Hi, you're listening to Comics and Chronic, and I'm Jake FH.
I'm Cody Cannon.
And I'm Anthony Iannaccio.
And you can tune in every Thursday to hear new episodes of Comics and Chronic.
And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Comics and Chronic. That's Comics, the letter N, Chronic.
We'll see you guys next week.
Woo!
Peace.